Thanks for listening to episode 2 of Talking Ball with guest Mike Adams of Baseball Performance Center, South Jersey. Now, Mike does a great job with high school and college and professional athletes in the South Jersey, Jersey Shore area. He develops pitchers, hitters, all facets of the game, strength training, and he just has a really great knowledge of, player development systems. So I'm really happy to bring him on, and I wanted to thank him again for spending some time here. So without further ado, here's Mike Adams from Baseball Performance Center in South Jersey.
All right, Mike, I wanted to thank you again for coming on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Mike, man, it's a long story about how we met, right? Back all the way to the professional days when I was just some low life college arm, and you were going into professional ball. But we'll get into it. I think the big question that we need to go over today is just talking about the shutdown and how it affects college recruiting. And I know you do a great job at BPC, making sure that guys get some help finding their spot. So I kind of want to get your opinion about how this shutdown affects, not just the 21 class that's, it's coming up on their big summer, but the 3 or 4 classes after it and your viewpoint on that one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with, the shortened draft and the season and everyone getting a year back, there's going to be a lot of backload in college baseball. It's probably a good thing for college baseball because you're going to have some premier talent that's going to stay there and that's going to be there for 3 years, which is always good to see. But it's definitely going to make it difficult for them, not only for them, but for the guys that they recruited. I mean, they're recruiting guys to fill in spots, and now the spots that those guys are supposed to fill aren't open anymore because of seniors coming back. I think it makes it difficult for them as well to handle the seniors because it's a school-by-school basis. So if your school has the funding to be able to bring a couple of guys back, you can. But if you don't, it makes it tough for them to pick and choose over older guys who are more experienced and then the new guys who they want to get experience. So it's tough. I mean, I think on the recruiting end too, the classes, they might not take that shot on that one last guy now. And I think they're also going to have to make decisions on players for the younger classes, seeing them less. They're not going to have the opportunity to see guys 3 or 4 times throughout a summer anymore, especially this summer, because we don't know how that's going to pan out. It's definitely going to backload it a lot. The talent's going to be there, but you're going to see guys moving all over the place. Obviously, as you've seen there's 800 guys in the portal total after today, I'm pretty sure. So you're going to see guys floating all over the place. I think for college baseball, it's going to make it better, though. You're going to have premier talent throughout, even in the JUCO, D3, D2 levels. So it's good, but it's definitely going to be tougher for the coaches. I feel like this decision kind of puts it all back on them as far as how things are going to go, and it falls into their lap.
And a follow-up on that one, I know that it's going to be 5 rounds, right? They're saying 5 rounds, limited money, all that. And I've heard 2 different opinions, right? Consensus usually is, 5 rounds is not good. It'll cut down the amount of opportunity. It will backload, like you said, college baseball. But I've even heard some things like, oh, well, they have money to sign undrafted free agents. Maybe they take a little bit more of some risks on some guys. Just since, you don't have to waste a draft pick, you can just kind of negotiate with them and go forth. I know that you have a lot more experience in the professional ball realm. What are your thoughts on like those type of ideas of the undrafted free agent with this class?
I mean, it's definitely going to allow. I mean, first of all, guys that are going to sign it, this draft being cut short it's going to set the precedent for the next few years. I think Manfred as a whole wants to cut down on the draft. He wants to cut down on affiliates. So I think this virus kind of allowed him to do that in a way that doesn't look as bad. So now next year, when they go to 20 rounds is going to be my guess, and they cut some affiliates. It's going to be tough. So it's definitely a weird situation. I mean, they can't sign a guy for over 20K. So if you're a free agent, you're going to have to take 20K to sign. But it's going to change because now getting into professional baseball, it's not going to be like, if I don't get drafted out of high school, like I'll just go to college and go. Like the guarantee that happens is getting smaller and smaller. The numbers are getting smaller, but if you do watch the draft and you watch a team's 40 picks, like they pick guys knowing they're not going to sign. They pick guys knowing they're relatives of a family member that played here or there. So there are like, I would say probably about 10 rounds. If they cut it to 30, that wouldn't be a problem for me. But 5 sucks because, I mean, just like in our case, we have, you know, a couple seniors who were probably guaranteed draft picks, and now, you know, they're gonna sign, or they have to go back for a 5th year. It changes them because they're getting a year older and they don't get a season to develop and they don't get a season to put stats up. So it makes it tough for them to be a year older next year and not be in an organization. And then you got some high school guys who could have been top 10 rounders, and you'll never know. And now they'll go to college. So it's definitely going to change it a lot. I hate to see the game shrink, but I guess, you know, if there's one way to do it, this is going to allow him to do it easier.
Yeah, I can completely see that. It's all, to me, it seems like it's all getting bottlenecked. Like it's going to affect more than just this upcoming year. It's going to affect the next couple of years, and even some opportunities that maybe those players who aren't as good but could, you know, there have been instances where players aren't as good. They come in and they develop to be extremely good. I just feel like I honestly feel bad for them where they might not get that opportunity, and that's just the rough part about this whole thing. But one of the questions I had is, you know, with this extended period of time, do you feel like there are any benefits to having this? I mean, obviously there are benefits to this 9 months, but I was just curious as to your opinion, like what you've been doing and how you've been helping your guys with it. Yeah,
so for us, I've actually been pretty ecstatic about the last couple of months. It's rare that you get to have the group of guys that we have throwing full intent off the mound and being able to make adjustments. So I mean, I would kind of explain it like a little bit of a spring training for them. It sucks that they don't get a season because ultimately, like, that's where you can really see how their performance on the field is developed or not developed. But I mean, these last couple of weeks, we've been able to get outside every day, be on the mound more, really dive into the numbers a little bit. So these guys have been able to learn not only like what their numbers are, but where their numbers need to go. And I've seen, this has probably been the best month and a half of development that I've seen. And it also has allowed us to, like, I mean, we don't have as many guys right now, so we're just going to the field with the guys that have to stay ready, the college, the older high school guys. So it's given us a little more one-on-one time and been able to really dive into some stuff. And there's so much knowledge out there right now that people are putting out there with the podcasts, and everyone's just trying to learn. So I think that in that way, if there's any benefit, I mean, I think I'm kind of thankful for the last month or so that these guys have been able to get work, and the amount that I've been able to learn. I mean, doing the Zooms and just listen to people talk. I mean, it's a good time to learn baseball right now.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. And so bringing it back towards me knowing you, Mike, right? You have had a really extensive career. I even hear stories of guys in the men's leagues down at the short edge. Man, you can still throw it a little bit. So I run us through your career. I know a lot of people who probably listening to this know you, but I think your story is just a really intriguing story about how you went from high school, college, professional ball, and how some of those stories affected your want to jump into be, you know, a coach.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I was mostly a shortstop, pitched a little bit. I would say maybe 20 innings total in my career. So I was mostly a shortstop when I went to Wagner. I was recruited there, and I went there as a two-way. They were like, hey, you know, we don't know what you're going to be. You can do both. We actually had a shortstop who got hurt a little bit. So I might have been the opening day starting shortstop because I could field a little bit, but we had a couple injuries on the mound. They're like, hey, you're just going to pitch. And I started opening weekend. Like I didn't really have a clue on what I was doing. Like I had a good arm. I could throw fastballs. Breaking balls were pretty below average. Change-ups, no feel. My command was pretty scattered. But I went to a school that gave me an opportunity to really develop myself. I mean, not many schools where I would have gotten 65 innings as a freshman, and nonetheless walked 57. So there's not a lot of schools where I'd have been able to be that raw and get consistent innings. So I was super thankful for that. But yeah, I mean, that's the one reason why I started getting into coaching, because a lot of the stuff I did, I self-taught myself a little bit. Like when I was at Wagner, they did a great job with, you know, our head coach was pitcher of the year at his conference, but he was he was a different pitcher than I was. So he was like, listen, I'm going to let you go because I really don't know what to tell you. So you're going to go out there and just figure it out. And I was able to do a lot of learning on my own. Summer ball. I met them. One of my buddies on the team was doing the weighted balls, plyo balls. And he was like, yo, you got to try this out. And I was like, and I was up there and I got the whole summer doing a weighted ball program. And I came back throwing 92, like as a sophomore, when I was probably like 86, 88 when I first got there. But that was kind of the first thing that really got me into the development side of baseball and the training aspect. Then after that, I pitched 4 years there, and I played with the Rockland Boulders in the Can-Am League, so an independent team. And that was awesome. That was like when I didn't get drafted, I went there thinking, damn, like I'm probably going to be one of the better guys on this team. Like I threw it pretty hard. I thought I threw pretty hard. We got there and we had guys throwing 100, guys that were in AA, guys that were in the big leagues, guys that had World Series rings. And it was a shell shock for me because I really didn't know what to expect. And that's kind of where I started to learn. And then I took an off season. The first off season I had at Baseball PDS is where I kind of got turned on to that style of training. That's where I met you and we were training together for a little while. So that's kind of where the interest in coaching started. And then after my first year in Rockland, when I was training there again, my dad was like, hey, I got a building you guys can use. So we went in there. We had to redo the whole thing, but my partner Ed and I, he does the hitting, and we went in there and we just had a couple kids to start from a couple of the local high school kids. And we just started testing things, trying new things. And, there was a lot of backlash at first because we were young guys doing new wave stuff. So a lot of people were really turned off by it, but that's kind of how it got started. But really having no one really teach me anything was kind of one of the better things that have ever happened because I really had to dive into things in a different way, which I'm super thankful for now.
Now, there's multiple things we can go after that, right? First of them was the fact that we were all at PDS, and I'll be honest, I was not only probably the worst player there, which is always a good thing, right? You want to challenge yourself. The amount of guys that went on to coach that were there that winter, like there was multiple college coaches. I know DeHart's with the Mariners, but like I think it's maybe just the training style in a way, right? You go through the training, you're like, oh, I really think that this is super interesting. And then it's just something that kind of hooks you and you continue to try to teach what you've been learning to some other people.
Yeah, there's definitely like an aura about it that when you start to learn about yourself, everyone starts to then ask you like what you've been doing. You kind of have that knowledge that people didn't look at baseball, I think, the way that, they do there. And the group of us looked at it. Like we were constantly looking at videos. I mean, throughout my college career, I don't remember ever looking at my mechanics from a side view and breaking them down. I was like, I throw pretty hard. They're probably pretty good. And that was it. And that was like the first time we kind of got turned on to that. And when we started like learning, it was just, we were just farther ahead of people as far as that. So everyone would constantly pick your brains and it made you feel like a coach in some aspect. But no, that's 100% true.
That's awesome. I mean, those experiences are extremely valuable. I mean, that's crazy. It's so cool you had to play with, indie ball and all that. But I was just wondering, playing into all those, some of the highest levels that you can play in, like what are some of the biggest takeaways that you've really incorporated? Maybe not in the statistics or data side of baseball, but just being a coach. Like how has playing in those high leagues like just molded you as a coach?
I think some of the experience factors, as far as like being in situations like right now, I mean, I think the hardest thing for guys to understand is how to control themselves when situations go bad. And I think that's one thing I really had to learn. Like, hey, you got 10,000 people, not 10,000, I don't even know how many. But some of the games we packed our stadium because we had a nicer stadium. So it's like my first start was on July 4th. And they're like, yo, you realize how many people are going to be there? I was like, do people come to these games? I have no idea. And I went there and they're like, yeah, you got to control your emotions. Stuff like that was the most valuable part. But there's just so many guys you're around and how they go about their business. Everyone was different. So when we had our pitching coach there, he was a coach player. So he was, I want to say 40, lefty arm, still ran it up to 89. But watching him pitch as far, like he would start off games with a 60-mile-an-hour breaking ball, just flopping it in like that. And you're like, what is he doing out there? Like, where am I? And next thing you know, he throws an 80-mile-an-hour breaking ball and then throws an 89-mile-an-hour fastball and he punched the guy out in 3 pitches. And you're like, that was like the first time I've seen pitching like up front, guys being able to manipulate the ball and reading hitters. That's one thing in college that I never did. I think at PDS I learned that a little bit too about like what they're looking for in the swing and, you know, when watching someone hit, what to look for. So that was valuable. But just being around people from different backgrounds and how they train was pretty crazy to see, because, I mean, you got guys who were from the Dominican who they don't crush the weight room down there. They long toss, they run. They're trying to throw hard. You got guys here who do a lot of different things. So it was a whirlwind of, you know, cultures in a locker room, and it was good to learn how to, you know, deal with all that.
Oh yeah, if there's any good learning environment, that sounds like a perfect one.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about you building up BPC, opening the doors, right? And there were some hurdles, right? You're a young coach, you got some new philosophies. Now, I'm not going to ask for names, right? We're not taking down names, but run me through like that period of time where you guys are getting your feet wet and you're dealing with, you know, for lack of a better term, just like a lot of hate.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was probably the hardest part when we first started is people don't take well to change, obviously, as we know. And the coaches in our area are really good coaches. You know, they're smart. They all played. So it's when guys play, you know, they have some sort of knowledge that's true. But when we came around, we're younger. So we're just out of baseball. We have a little bit of a different, you know, mentality and a mindset about what we want from guys. Like it's hard for coaches to see at first. I think that we were legitimately building the business off developing guys to try to go to college. And for us, you know, the difference is when we play with our travel team, like winning is not what we focus on.
Right.
You know, we're not going to have our 9-hitter bunt every time. It doesn't help him when he gets to college if he's only bunted for the last few years. He's not going to be able to hit. So stuff like that is what we focus our training off of. And obviously from the start, being young and being new, and there's obviously a lot of egos no matter which way. So it's tough to get over that. I think after a while, you know, they started to see that guys were better. They started to see that their guys were practicing baseball when it wasn't baseball season. And I think that's the first thing that, you know, the reason we started the business is because we would be home for winter break in that month before college starts, and you're preparing for a Division I season in that month. It's probably the most important month of the year, and you're home on your own doing it. So Ed and I and a couple of our other buddies, like we would be at a cage hitting, and it's like you pay $40 every day and like every single day to go to the cage. So we kind of had the idea of, you know, we want to do it monthly. We want to make it accessible so guys can come as long as they want, whenever they want. And then just that way through word of mouth. But there's always going to be hate. I feel like if you do a good enough job, there's going to be hate no matter what. Because if you think about it, when you're a baseball guy in an area, like anytime something new comes that it wasn't your idea, it's really tough for people to say, yeah, that's just a great idea. Like they're always going to be like, oh yeah, you know, I know what I'm doing more than that. So it's always difficult to deal with that. But I think early on we learned that it's best for us to just continue to try to make guys better and not really say anything. And I think that's when everything started to get better. Coaches started to reach out and want their guys to do things in the off season. So that was kind of how the tides changed a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's. I mean, just the fact that you were able to start up your own facility and just be able to, you know, afford the opportunity to all the guys that come there. I mean, that's really huge. We've seen it, and it's just the way it runs is really impressive to me. So I really got to give you props on that one.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, yeah, obviously the environment is the big thing, and that's kind of how it started. Is you get some guys in there, and you know they tell their friends, and they tell their friends, and then everyone wants each other to do well. Like everyone wants the area to have better baseball. So I think once, you know, a couple guys came in and saw success. Obviously, Dan Noonan was probably he was one of our first clients, so that really helped us because he's, you know, he's one of the hardest workers we have. Really smart baseball guy. So him kind of being at the forefront was big for us, and he was a good example for the rest of the guys.
Definitely. So, you talked about the facility. I'm just curious, if you can go into a little bit of what BPC, what a player would get when they come to BPC.
So obviously we offer pitching, hitting, and strength training. It's year round. So we have guys that come to us 5 days a week for 12 months straight. But I think the environment is the number one thing that I think attracts people, and that's probably the best part about it is when you're in there, you're with other players that also want to be good. So not only does that help you, but it also forces you to, it holds you to a standard, it keeps you accountable, and everyone in there all has the same goal. I feel like, a lot of kids can get lost when, they're really good, but they're with other guys who don't take it as serious. And I think that's one of the biggest kickers is, when we got guys that commit, like there's also 10 other commits. So there's going to be 5 of them that really, really, really rise to the top. And there's going to be 5 of them that don't. And I think the more guys that you put in there, the standard just continues to get higher. That, and then obviously the ability to, especially in baseball, when you see parents and kids, we don't let parents in the facility really. There's nowhere for them to sit. There's no seats. They feel weird because the music is loud and it's a locker room atmosphere. So it lets kids get out of their comfort zone a little bit. You see kids really start to blossom and really start to gain confidence about what they do on the baseball field. It allows them to interact with their peers and their teammates and guys from other high schools. And then I think the knowledge is third. Obviously, we try to instill as much knowledge and teach them things, but I think the environment teaches the most because not only is it's like a fraternity almost. I want to say, like, you come in there, you're a young kid, and we talk to them about commitment. Like, hey, if you're a freshman, like, you got to come here for 4 years, and really get after it. And it could be you could get better right from the start. It could take you a while. Like, you could plateau. It's going to be up and down. So I think it's a lot about life that they can take with them as far as, hey, even if I didn't achieve my goal, like, I worked my ass off for 4 years to get where I'm at and to make me a better person or player. But yeah, I mean, just an everyday basis, they can do anything baseball wise they need. I mean, we have some tech now with the Rapsodo and that kind of stuff, but pitching, hitting, lifting, like, they're going to come in there and really to be able to take their game to the next level, as well as, like, mentally and, overall with how they're going to handle life and the ups and downs.
Yeah, you can definitely see when you add that piece of competition into the mix that, like, guys really get going. Like, I know, for us, when we went into an individual period right around Thanksgiving and we started doing some plyo care velocity, like, you could see guys just, like, talking mad crap to each other.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just such a great environment that it's really hard to replicate, even when, you're playing games or you're doing the fall and you're playing inter squads, you're playing outside competition, regardless. But next question that we have is just talking about, like, working with pro guys, right? So at BPC, you got pro guys, you got high school guys, you got college guys, especially in the off season, you got, like, all three mixing in. So at least in my experience, there's a huge difference between coaching a professional, a high school, and a college guy. So I just wanted your take on that and get a viewpoint on your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pro guys are a little, not tougher, but you have to play it a little bit different with them. Like, you could get a guy that's had a really successful career and they might not want to make adjustments. So having them understand, about themselves and where they can be better is tough sometimes because, if you're a pro and you're just coming to BPC, like, you've probably done a lot of things right to get to where you are. But I think that's where kind of the Rapsodo and that kind of stuff comes into play. Because right now, the high school guys, if they throw a fastball at 90 miles an hour with 80 efficiency or 100, it's probably not going to matter very much. They're probably blowing the guys' doors off because it's high school. But I think that's where some of the newer stuff that we've been doing can make a bigger difference, especially obviously on the pitching side, but I think on the hitting side too. You're good athletes in high school. Whether they have a good swing or a bad swing, they can probably out athlete some guys to, have a good average and hit for power. So I think this is where the finer details comes in. So the following the program, like it's a little bit longer. You have to plan stuff out. The smaller cues in the delivery, you can really own in with guys on. Like normally, when you get a high school guy, the cues are very minimal. We're like, yeah, we're breaking down video, but these guys are a little bit more advanced. You can give them more. I honestly love it because as much as I'm trying to teach them, like I'm also learning from them as well, the interaction and how they see guys and how they see things and how they, pitch. Like a couple of the guys right now, like, that we have, they're into the data. Like we're always looking at numbers. So it really changes what you do from a high school kid to them. But I mean, it's crazy. You could tell them one cue and all of a sudden they can do it like on the first try. So it's definitely different and it's fun. It's just a different challenge because you also send them away for 8 months and they're completely on their own, and then they come back and return, and everyone's off-season program is different. You get guys that want to take 2 months off, you guys that take none off. So really understanding what makes them tick and what they like and what they want to do is huge. Normally the high school guys, you're telling them everything, but the pro guys have a little bit more of an understanding of their body, how they feel after certain things. So it's a different challenge.
Oh yeah, I feel like you hit that one right on the nose. I mean, just working with those different levels of competition, especially, I mean, personally for me, if we're working with a guy and then they go away for a little bit of time, like, for example, in the winter, it's just good to see, like, you can see how they improved.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what that makes me feel good. But so you had mentioned that you BPC is getting into a lot of the tech, especially Rapsodo. I'm just curious, what are some of your biggest takeaways? How to use that to maximize your progression of your players? It seems like a lot of people have the Rapsodo, but they don't really know everything about it and how to use it the best. So I was just curious, what are some ways you use it to maximize your?
Yeah, so that was definitely me. We first got Rapsodo and it was awesome, and I wasn't really sure what I was looking at, and I think over this last couple months is when I thank God for the quarantine is when I've really been able to dive into it. And we have, some of the older high school guys and the pro guys that we can really make some adjustments. But I mean, the first thing that we've been really focusing on lately is fastball efficiency. Being able to spin the baseball properly is huge. I mean, the organizations are looking for the sexy thing is the vertical fastball and getting guys that I've always watched some guys be like, why does this guy never get hit? And why does this guy get hit? And I think when you put numbers to that, a lot of it makes sense. So Sean Mooney, for example, was one of the guys, like he just never gets hit. He's pitched super, super well. And we get him on Rapsodo for the first time. And it's like 12 o'clock axis, 20 vert fastball, negative 20 vert curveball, 6 o'clock axis. Like his pitches are plus, they match, and everything makes sense when you watch him throw, and he commands the hell out of the ball. But efficiency is huge. Being able to just add a secondary pitch that actually can get a swing and a miss. Like you see a lot of guys that are going to throw breaking balls with vert on them, and getting them to understand that, we want negative vert, and what a breaking ball actually looks like is good. I mean, I think you can just understand your pitches a little bit better in your repertoire. And then obviously, if you have certain characteristics, you're going to be able to have more success in this part of the zone versus this part of the zone. So that's the stuff that we've been getting into lately, which has been fun because these guys have been, once you kind of get to that threshold of where your velo is going to be at, I mean, for you to master your craft and really develop outs, I think that's stuff that's super important as they go. And once they get into college and, they go to higher level Division I schools, that stuff really matters. I mean, making your 90 better than someone else's 90 is huge. And having a pitch that you have confidence in that, if it's a 2-0 count and you have a plus fastball to this part of the zone, being able to throw it there with confidence is huge. I mean, that's something I remember being in the 2-0 count. I'm like, oh no. 1, I don't know if there's going to be a strike, and 2, I don't know where I'm even supposed to throw this. But them being able to understand themselves is definitely an advantage.
Oh, that's awesome. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed especially is a lot of these coaches find something that works and they'll stick to it. I call it being cookie cutter. And especially with the Rapsodo, it's easy to see that if you have a really extreme, like high V break on your fastball, it's good. So it's easy to just say, oh, well, I want everyone to be like this. I was just curious, what are some ways that you attack the progression and not try to be different, kind of make every player his own type of workout training or whatever it may be.
Yeah, so I think that's where basically when guys come in, we start them with an eval. So they'll come in, we'll take them through our warm up, and we'll watch them throw off the mound. We won't really say anything to them, and we'll take their numbers, we'll take their mechanics, and we'll break them down. So obviously, like, I think finding your identity on the mound is huge, and I think that starts with your fastball. I mean, most guys are going to throw their fastball at a higher percentage, so finding that ideal fastball is where we normally start. We have, I would say 70% of the guys are probably, four-seam fastball guys, and then you have your other guys that are your sinker, your east-west guys. So I think it starts with that, and then being able to develop the pitches off of that. But I think it's also taking guys' strengths. Like if we have a kid that has, a really good slider, but he throws his fastball, four-seam, like we're going to let him throw a high vert four-seam fastball and a slider. It doesn't always have to be four-seam curveball or two-seam slider. So I think taking guys' strengths and going from there. And I think that's one of the big things we did this year or within the last year is going to watch guys play live. So you can see what guys, rise to the occasion, what guys' stuff changes in the game, what guys, get a little shell shocked when stuff hits the fan. So I think that allowed us to learn more about guys, to see like what they need. But that's kind of the thing, is individualization is huge. So I feel like the things that we harp on change with every guy, which is something that we've been really striving to do. And now that we have a little bit of a bigger staff and we have a lot more guys, it's tougher to do that. But that's the name of the game, is being able to give everybody their own feels and their own focuses, so they can continue to develop themselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been two really big things that I've really enjoyed from, watching you guys on social media, and even you talking right there. And we'll get into the other half. It's a little bit more mechanical based, but when it comes to Rapsodo, you are borderline obsessed about spin efficiency, which I think there needs to be more people that should be really just obsessed about what's happening with spin efficiency. And that's just because the amount of kids that have come in, and I've actually just seen it, and you just see them either like cut or just over pronate the ball, and it just pops up and it's like, below like 70% efficiency. Yeah. You're just like, oh my God. Like, and then you talk to them and you're like, hey, how much are you throwing that fastball? And they're like, well, I really don't like any of my other pitches. I'm throwing it probably like 70% of the time. And I'm like, Jesus, Mary and Joseph. And I even know that you've been really big into like the Clean Fuego, working on spin efficiency. So could you tell me a little bit about how you came to that conclusion of like, okay, well, fastball spin efficiency is really, really serious, and we need to be attacking this nearly every single day?
Yeah, I mean, that was something that, so the guy who created Clean Fuego, his name is Connor McGinnis, and he is one of the pitching coaches. He's the assistant big league guy for the Dodgers. So he was actually kind of the one that kind of led me down that path as far as, hey, this matters a lot. Like I was asking him about the product, and he was like, yeah, efficiency. And then once he was talking about it, I kind of started to look into it, like the difference of 100% and 80%, what that does to your fastball, and understanding, like, we had a couple guys that, like, why does this guy not get swings and misses, and why does this guy get swings and misses? Like, they're throwing the same velo, they're throwing it in the same spots, but this guy seems to always gets hit, and this guy seems to get the swing and miss. I think once, you start to look at the numbers a little bit, you can see why it's super important. That, where your average big league fastball is a 15, if you throw balls at a 15, it's pretty easy for hitters to get a good swing off. And once you get it above a 17, all of a sudden, you're missing above, and if they hit it, they're popping up. So that was one of the big things that, I never looked at first. So now guys that like are throwing, like guys that throw good velo, I'm like, we got to backspin. Like your 90 is not the same as everyone's 90. Like even if, your spin rate is 2,800. That's one of the things that we got Rapsodo. I was like, let's see this guy's spin rate, or like, let's see how much break he has on his breaking ball. But then I was starting to understand like more details about spin rate is only good if your fastball is efficient. If like the difference between total spin and true spin is a lot, especially on fastballs. Like you want to look at true spin, which I feel like people miss sometimes because they're like, that was 2,800. But that's when they talk about like guys that throw 100 versus guys that actually throw 100, where like the 100 gets ripped because it's not efficient. It doesn't have the jump that the normal 100 would. But the Clean Fuegos are awesome, by the way. I mean, it's a product where you can't accidentally throw the ball right. Like, you have to really pronate through, backspin, and get behind the ball to do it. Like, you could make 20 throws and all 20 could cut, and it consistently gives you the feedback. Like, there's no way around it for you to throw it and spin it without seeing the color on the sides. You have to do it right. And it's something that guys with 100% efficiency still struggle with doing all the time. So it's something that, you know, the different weights help out, and it really can let guys see that in catch play, because obviously we only have the Rapsodo when they're on the mound. So when they're on the mound, they know what their efficiency is, but when they're playing catch, you know, they could be re-ingraining a really good pattern, or they could be doing the same thing they always do. And then when they get on the mound, they're going to expect different results, which, as we know, doesn't work. So it's a really good tool for them, especially how often we do plyos. Obviously, plyos can force a little bit of cut just because, you know, when you throw it head on and you get on the side, you can't really see the spin on it. So I think that's a good product for these guys to use before, and I have them throw it before and after. And it's really helped a lot of guys so far.
Mike, I love you and I hate you because you're giving out all this good information, man. Like, that's money right there. Because I've always said this about, and I think we had this talk with my buddy who was the first episode, Nick. And it's like there's these flashy stats, especially with like these new age stats that you'll get from Rapsodo, that people love. People love talking about spin rate. Where they're like, oh, you know, I spun it once at 2,500. You're like, okay, well, like that really doesn't mean anything. And it's crazy how, you know, we're pushing people who enjoy the game a little bit more towards it. They're interested in spin rate and so on and so forth. But my big takeaway is like spin rate really doesn't tell me anything. Like, exit velo doesn't tell me anything, right? It tells me you can swing it hard, but there's a lot more to the picture than just that. So I'm disappointed, Mike, man. You're gonna give out good information here, dude.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So I think the next big question that comes off of that, right, is you have, and this is an issue that we've run into a lot of times, is like you have all this information. Like if you've ever seen the screen from the feedback from the Rapsodo from our listeners, there's a lot of information coming up on every single pitch. So I think one thing that I've always been interested in is how do you communicate that to somebody who's A, not really interested in the data, or B, is going to get really, really domed up from that. So what are some of the paths that you've taken on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the line that you flirt with certain guys. And I think that's where how our facility's set up, where we're around the guys every day, you can kind of figure out who's who as far as how guys are going to handle certain things, how guys aren't. As far as the data goes, most guys, like, you know, the guys that we have want to get better. Like, even if they pitch really good that day, like they want to know what makes their fastball, what it could make it better, or what happened that day where they can improve on. But I think, you know, I don't give them all the data. I give them where their data is at now, you know, where they need it to go. And I give them that for them to look at, but the rest of it is like, I'm looking at it. And then I'll tell them a couple things, but some guys want to know every single thing about the pitch. And those are the guys that, you know, you give them, they want to know. You give it to them, and that's how they learn. Some guys are like, yo, how hard was that? That was a pretty good arm side fastball. I'm like, yeah, it was good. You know, just keep it there. Or maybe try one of these things. So every guy's a little bit different. I feel like that's where the relationship part comes into it. But for the most part, through Rapsodo, there hasn't been too many guys that have gotten domed up like you could with mechanics. And, you know, obviously, and velo, like all the guys, you know, are obviously chasing velo. And that's one of the things that we talk about is how, like, our guys have throw every pen they have on a gun. So they now finally, some of them understand that the velo is going to fluctuate by the day. It's going to fluctuate whether you're in a game or whether you're in a bullpen. I think that's scary for a lot of people. I've heard stories about big league guys that, like, have never thrown on a gun in the off season. The first time they're throwing like 87, and they're like, wow, I lost velo. And then, you know, they get out there and they throw 95. So that's one of the things that we have to battle with all the time. Is guys like, damn, why am I throwing hard today? And like, we'll talk about mechanics. But as far as the data, guys have been pretty good with that. This is also the first time we've really given them, like, hey, this is where your pitches are. This is the axis that we want you to get to. This is the efficiency. This is the spin direction on the breaking ball that we want. So that's been good so far. I would say they don't get as domed up as they would with mechanics, but everyone takes the data and kind of interprets it differently. So I think knowing the guys is gonna help you determine how much or how little you give them.
Right. That's you nailed that one right on the head. Talking about the Rapsodo, about Clean Fuego, all these tools are just are really good for baseball. But I was wondering if there's any kind of like advancement, anything, with this new age, aside, it doesn't have to be tech, but, is there anything that just really piques your interest when it comes to, the progression in baseball?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it really seems that every progression in baseball now is against the pitcher. So honestly, I still am really big on movements. Like I was in a Zoom call the other day with Eugene Bleeker, and he was talking about the front leg and stuff like that. So there's always things that like I thought I had an okay grasp on, and I'm relearning. But movements are just like that. That's what it is appealing to me. Like that's just the one thing that I think is always going to trump everything is you don't want to chase numbers, like you want to chase movements. And if you chase the movements, then numbers will be really good, especially with younger guys. Like you got high school guys who are maturing and going through puberty. Like they could have really, really good mechanics and not throw that hard, but they're not going to be able to just throw it harder one day. Like they have to have those movements, they have to ingrain them. And as they progress, the numbers will come. And I think that's the one thing that you see all the time is we have guys sometimes that just are all of a sudden 5 miles an hour faster. And that's just them growing. That's them having good movements and being able to grow into it smoothly. So the movement stuff and starting to get into like, the really in-depth mechanical stuff with the guys that, I mean, we got guys that throw 90, like obviously we want them to be able to throw 95 and we want them to be able to have, efficient mechanics. But there's that line of, are we going to spend a couple months to gain 2 miles an hour, or are we going to spend a couple months to really develop your stuff and your command and where you can get away with throwing certain pitches? So that's kind of the line that you flirt with that, we're starting to run into now, which is awesome because I'm trying to learn about the data as much as I possibly can. I feel like that's the stuff that I've really been known in on over the last couple months. So that stuff, I mean, how TrackMan and Rapsodo are different, which is something that still blows my mind.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just still trying to figure that out. But I like the way the game's going, and I think, the more data we have and the more guys start to speak out on how they use data is going to be really good for the fans.
True, man. You're hitting a lot of points that I've been thinking about in quarantine too. So I'm glad to see that we're like on the same wavelength. Yeah. So I mean, like that. How does Rapsodo metrics correlate to TrackMan metrics? That's a huge one that I don't have the answer for, and it seems like you're still searching for it too.
Yeah.
But I think I got two questions. Recently, I saw you post a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet about, this is where your pitch metrics on Rapsodo, and this is the ideal, right? Yeah. And I love that idea. I think that's a great idea. My big question is, when it comes to, let's say we get a player, he's an in-between spin axis of being more of a horizontal fastball or a vertical fastball, and you decide, okay, great, let's move it more vertical for whatever reason. Yeah. How much success have you had in changing that axis? And if so, what are the cues? What are the thought processes? What are some of the drills that you would attack with that?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we've been big on lately is as far as the fastball go, like in my opinion, there's two dead zones. So from a righty, it's the 130 axis, and from the lefty, it's a 1030. So no matter what, so far, the 130 axis, if you're throwing any fastball, the numbers are your 12-12s, your 15-15s, and your pitches that aren't being dominated by the vert or the horizontal either way. So we're really trying to keep guys out of that slot. It depends. So when I decide on what way they go, I look at like their last pen, and their numbers always fluctuate a little bit. So like you'll have guys that'll throw one at a 110, they'll throw one at a 145, and the guys that kind of have that lower slot, those are the guys that when they fluctuate around 130, they fluctuate down to like 138 and 140. So those are the guys I normally drop. But sometimes without pens, I'll be like, yo, throw this over the top. Let's get inside of 1 o'clock, see what we got. If there's really, really good vert, we'll stay with it. Or, hey, let's get a 145, see what we got. It's a lot of trial and error, honestly. But those are the two big things with, obviously, once the efficiency is good, is keeping guys' arms out of the 1030 and the 130. And then from there, I think too, you can look at their breaking ball. You know, if they have a plus slider, like obviously pairing is a thing. You know, matching the times on the clock with each other is huge. I don't think it's something that needs to be no matter what. But I think if you have a guy with a really plus slider, like he might be able to have a horizontal fastball. But it kind of depends. Obviously, I hate that answer because I hate when people give that depends answer because, you know, they don't really give any info, but that's kind of how it goes. But I would say majority of our guys are high vert guys. That's the one I would say probably 70% is what we have. But it also depends like how they move. You know, if they're a really loose mover, they're going to be able to get their arm up into that. You know, like we have a couple 12:30, 12 o'clock guys, and we're like, hey, you know, if you get that, and especially if you have the low release height, like you were gonna chill right there and be able to throw those fastballs, you know, with 75% fastballs, which is good. But the dead zone is definitely something that we harp on all the time. So I kind of have them throw fastballs up and down, see which one plays better, and then look at the breaking ball too, and kind of decide where they go from there.
That's a great thought process, and that's a good nugget. Like there's dead zones between vert and horizontal, and I think that you adding on with the spin access is it's very interesting. It's very beneficial for a lot of people that will listen to this. The last thing, and I know we talked about this before we pressed play and started recording, was I'll take you back to like November, right? And in November, I don't want to say you started going off, but you started going off about like, in a good way, on back leg mechanics, right? And I'll say from personal experience when I was a player, I had no idea what throwing with your legs meant, right? I really don't think either of us did. But you talked a lot about this idea, and you can either agree or disagree with the terminology, but like the vertical shin, right? Having a vertical shin. So my big question around that is, how did you come to that conclusion, A? And B, I know the next day you had a drill with one of your guys, just trying to, I think, work through that. What are some drills that you're working on to, you know, get guys into better, you know, angles and vertical shin and make sure that they're using their lower half better?
Yeah. So how I kind of came across that is kind of a crazy story. So when I was in college, my back leg was not good. No matter what I did, lifted, long toss, everything, my velo was the same, 88, 92, no matter what. It never went up, never went down.
Ditto, minus 89 to 92.
Yeah. So that's just what I was. I couldn't do anything to change it. So once BPC opened up and we were kind of going through there, I wasn't really throwing or working out. Like I would throw with the guys here and there, but my arm definitely wasn't in like mound shape or any of that stuff. But, you know, one day I saw a couple drills on Twitter and I was like, and I was just trying them out, see if I liked them. And I was like, I need to start, you know, just getting my throw right. So when I demo it, like I don't tell somebody to do something and then show them something the opposite. So after a couple weeks, like I really fixed my back leg up. And then one day I was like, damn, I got to try this out. And like the day I did that, I was throwing 95 in a bullpen. And I was like, well, this is wild. I haven't thrown or worked out in months. And the only thing that I did different was fix the shin angle of my back leg.
Wow.
So that's kind of where it like turned a light bulb on in my head a little bit that it matters. I went to ABCA this year and Randy Sullivan was talking about the correlation between health and velocity, and his number one correlation was the back leg. So obviously it's the first move. So if you can really have a good first move, everything else falls into sequence a lot easier. If you have a bad one, everything has to make up for it. But some of the drills, I think you've probably seen some of the ones with Chase Petty where he does like the pistol squat and he sits. I think people really feeling the glute is huge. But I think the biggest thing is the coil. To have the shin angle, you have to coil around the leg. Like when your front hip pulls open early, your back hip has to follow. It's just how your body's built. So when that follows, the knee turns down. So the longer you keep your front hip closed, the longer you hold the coil, the better and longer you can hold the shin angle. I mean, I think if you've watched Chapman, like you see his coil, like, yeah, he's obviously the elite example, but he holds the coil so well. That's like the one thing you'll notice in this throw is how well he coils. And I think that's huge. But a lot of the drills they're kind of standard, but just how we have guys focus on them, I think is different. Like I have a lot of guys just throw the plyos from the stretch, and one guy's working on front leg and one guy's working on back leg. But I think the coil is the big thing. I know at PDS they used to talk about like getting the spring, and you used to have to, keep your foot screwed into the ground. Like that's all huge. And I think doing that and being able to like get back pocket around to the hitter, that kind of stuff is verbiage that I use all the time. And I mean, when you have plyos and you're throwing into a wall, you can really hammer home the movements. There's no other factors as far as how hard it's coming out or where you're throwing it or commanding it. Like it's you, the movement and the wall. And I think that's one of the keys to doing it is every time we get guys off the mound, like we keep them away from the mound for a month and work on mechanics. They get on the mound, their mechanics improve, and their velo goes up almost every time. So when guys get on the mound and they're trying to practice moves, they're not going to be able to replicate them right away. It takes a while. And when they get on the mound and do it, if they do it wrong, they set themselves back a little bit. So we're like, hey, when we do this, you're going to take a month and not go on the mound. We're going to hammer down on the wall. We're going to do plyo velo stuff if you want to throw hard, long toss, and then from there we'll translate it back on. But the pistol squat one, I like the jump back throw. I like just doing walking windups and really focusing on it. So those are like kind of the three that guys use all the time. But yeah, I think the back leg is vital.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just one thing I've taken away from you is the creativity that you have, trying to help your guys out and maximize their performance. It's huge, especially coming from young guys. I know we're all younger guys coaching baseball, but on that point, one of the last things I had was, is there anything any resources that you have, that you're using to learn for the young coaches out there who may just be getting into it? I know I'm only 21, so I'm still getting into it, and I love to learn. But like I said, what are some of the resources that you've used to inform yourself on baseball, pitching, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I watch so much video. I use Twitter. Like, I think Ben Brewster is onto a lot of good things. I constantly watch his posts and his videos. Like I said about Connor McGinnis, as far as the Rapsodo stuff, that's the guy who I talk to a lot. I mean, he's like a walking just computer with Rapsodo data. But yeah, honestly, like, I think that's the one thing is that once you kind of think things, like the other day I woke up, I was like, I just built a spreadsheet. Guys were asking questions. I was like, yeah, I think I know a little bit about this. I went on a Zoom call and Eugene Bleecker was talking about the front leg. And I was like, wow, I've never looked at it like that. I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. And I think that's the kind of like, you just go on and you watch things and you pick up. I would say the program that we have at BPC is small bits and pieces of so many different things, whether that's things I've seen, things I've done. And I think, I don't know exactly what the quote was, but I think like they were talking about how, the most important info you learn is normally from someone else's mouth. And you just kind of ingrain it, take it in, do what you want with it, and then translate it to what you're doing. And people always say like stealing and, I've used things from so many different people, and to create our own thing. And I think watching other people is huge. And obviously the whole growth mindset, like I bet in a month from now, if we had this conversation again, I'd be talking about something else that I just watched. But yeah, I mean, I like Brewster a lot. Obviously Driveline is great. Like, I mean, I use Baseball Savant a lot for the data, but I think just watching video and trying things out and failing is probably the best way to figure it out.
Cool. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we're going to wrap it up there because I think we could talk baseball for the next 3 hours and be okay with it.
Yeah.
You got some good stuff there. I mean, you even harped on Baseball Savant, which, man, like Brendan and I will have calls every week and we'll just be on Baseball Savant since there's no baseball. And we'll be like, oh, what would you do here? What would you do there? So it's good to hear. It's good to hear. So, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on the call, talking about some really big nuggets, honestly. Like you hit like 2 or 3 things there that are big pillars of my personal pitching philosophy at the moment. So I really appreciate you being willing to talk about that stuff.
Oh man, I'm fired up about this. Thanks for having me. Anytime you guys want to get this going again, dude, you let me know.
We'll fire it up because at this
Yeah.
rate, we might be in here for a while.
Dude,
Yeah,
we
you
will.
have to.
So no, but Mike, what are the handles for Instagram, Twitter, just so people can find you?
On Instagram, we're at Baseball Performance Center with a dash at the end, and on Twitter, we are at _BPCSJ. So those are the two platforms we use the most.
Yep, perfect, man. So I appreciate it. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Appreciate the talk.